Today, we're diving into something you probably never thought you'd hear. Mao Zedong's vision for an interplanetary, post-human future. And no, that's not the plot of some sci-fi novel. It's actually the subject of a really fascinating academic paper called Interplanetary Revolutions. And we're going to unpack what it says right now.
So, get this. This quote right here, this is the future that Mao Zedong apparently envisioned. We're not talking about a new government or a different economy on Earth. We're talking about a future with a totally new species, something more advanced than us, something that has shed its physical body as we know it. The big question is, where on Earth does an idea this radical, what the source paper basically calls a form of transhumanism, even come from?
To figure that out, here's our game plan. First, we'll dig into Mao's actual cosmic vision. Then, we'll look at the revolutionary process he thought would get us there. After that, we're going to trace the idea's DNA, looking back through Soviet thinkers and even to Karl Marx himself, before we wrap it all up.
All right, so first up, let's just try to get our heads around the vision itself. This concept of a cosmic communist future. A revolution that literally leaves the planet.
Okay, first we got to get a key term on the table: transhumanism. You've probably heard it. It's this idea that we can and should use technology to enhance ourselves, to go beyond our biological limits. The paper we're looking at argues that Mao's cosmic vision was basically a unique, politically charged version of this very idea.
I mean, the ambition here is just staggering. According to the paper's analysis, the end goal wasn't just a new kind of society. It was about pushing humanity to evolve beyond its current biological form, to spread out into the cosmos and become what Mao apparently saw as a post-human species, a higher stage of being.
But how? Right? That's the obvious question. How did he believe this incredible, frankly bizarre transformation could actually happen? Well, the paper's analysis points to a pretty specific ideological process.
So the analysis breaks it down into 4 steps. First, Mao apparently tweaked a core Marxist idea that economics drives history and instead put the emphasis on the sheer power of human will. That leads to step 2, this belief in the limitless potential of people to overcome anything, which then justifies step 3, endless revolution, a constant churning struggle to transform not just technology and culture, but biology itself. And the final, wildest step, the belief that humanity could actually survive something like a nuclear war and then use that catastrophe as the launching pad to finally break free from Earth and from our own bodies.
And what's really interesting is that, according to the paper, these themes weren't entirely new for Mao. His early writings, even before he got deep into Marxism, were apparently already full of these kinds of ideas, thinking about immortality, about alternate worlds, even the destruction of Earth, and this core belief in the supreme power of human will. So his later revolutionary framework just gave these old interests a new and much more radical home.
So, you might be wondering, was Mao just completely alone in thinking this way? Well, not entirely. The paper is careful to trace this intellectual DNA, showing that these ideas actually had roots in earlier Soviet utopian thought.
You see, this whole idea has a history. It started way back in the early 1900s with a movement called Russian Cosmism, where thinkers were already dreaming about space travel and even immortality. Then by 1924, you have Leon Trotsky writing about humanity re-engineering itself into a Superman. Later on, this idea kind of cooled down into the more manageable concept of the new Soviet man. The source material argues that Mao just grabbed this tradition and absolutely supercharged it, pushing it from a social idea to a radical biological conclusion.
Let's just put these two side by side because the difference is everything. The new Soviet man was really a psychological goal, a new consciousness, a new mindset, created by a new society. But Mao's vision, at least as this paper interprets it, took a giant leap into biology. He wasn't just imagining a new way of thinking, he was imagining an entirely new species.
Okay, so for the final piece of the puzzle, the paper argues that the ultimate philosophical seed for all of this, well, it might be found in the work of Karl Marx himself.
According to this analysis, the philosophical door for all of this was kicked open by Karl Marx. Why? Because he didn't really see human nature as this fixed, unchanging thing. He saw it as something malleable, something that could shaped and reshaped by history and by technology.
And that very idea, that our nature isn't set in stone, is what allowed later thinkers to imagine transforming it in such radical ways.
You can see the contrast pretty clearly here. The traditional view is that human nature is basically universal and stuck within the limits of our biology. But the paper highlights Marx's very different view, that our essence changes over time, and our potential is constantly being redefined by the tools we create. This belief in a flexible, malleable human nature, that's the key. That's what unlocks this whole utopian and eventually transhumanist line of thinking that came after him.
So let's pull all these threads together. We've got Mao's frankly wild cosmic vision, we've got the revolutionary process he imagined, and we've got this long intellectual history. How do they all mix together to create this idea of cosmic communism?
Well, the paper pretty much gives us the recipe. You start with the base of Marx's idea of a malleable human. Then you mix in the heady dreams of Soviet utopianism and its vision of a new man. And finally, you add the catalyst, Mao's own unique philosophy of endless permanent revolution. You put all that together, and you get this startling, almost unbelievable vision.
So look, if you take just one thing away from this explainer today, let it be this. The paper Interplanetary Revolutions shows us that for some thinkers, the goal of politics isn't just about rearranging the state or fixing the economy. Sometimes the ultimate ambition can be to fundamentally rewrite the very definition of what it means to be human.
And really, that leaves us with a final, pretty powerful question to think about. It's one thing to change laws, to change institutions, but what are the real implications, the promises, and maybe the dangers, when a political project sets its sights not just on conquering society, but on conquering our species itself? Thank you for joining The Explainer.